Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 3, Episode 43. I am your host, Alejandro. With me is my beloved co-host, who is one of three people complaining about the lack of weapon wheel in Spider-Man.
Hi, everybody. I'm a better Spider-Man than everybody else, and I can prove it.
Yeah. Paul, I told you, I listened to every freaking spoiler cast that came out around the same time that ours came out, which people can go listen to. It came out last Saturday. And I wanted to hear if there were more people that had your exact same complaints about a weapon wheel that 99.9% of the population that played that game in normal difficulty didn't use. And lo and behold, three people I've heard complain about that. Paul is one of them, which goes to
In my defense, if you look at the thread of comments on that video, there are a few others, maybe like still 8 or 9 max, because I scrolled through them.
Yeah.
But truthfully, it's clearly not like they made a bet and it paid off because not enough people cared as much about it. But I did like the specific context that they talked about where the stealth took a huge hit in that process. But
yeah, when in that, especially in that IGN spoiler cast, which is the thing that I linked to, it's like, hey, look, I found someone else that mentioned it, and to the director on top of that. So it was like a direct conversation with the director. So,
and the fact that he acknowledged it, I was like, that feels nice. I can take my L after this.
Yeah. Whether they're gonna answer to that, it'll depend. Again, it's like, it's all about heat mapping. They really check. It's like, you don't know, but it's like a lot of, especially right now that so many consoles are like connected online, there's always like secret parameters that they always check, which is heat mapping, where how they see people play their game. Like sometimes when so many games that tell you to accept like terms of service and all that, it's in those terms of service that it's like they keep track on seeing the data, and the data proved that people didn't like slowing their gameplay down for the 8 different gadgets. It's kind of like what I told you, and it's so funny that it's not as common a complaint. I just find that so funny. But Paul, it's November now. Can you believe that?
Nope. After every time you ask me, I can't believe it is November.
Yeah.
We have 2 months left till the end of the year and 2024 happens.
Yeah, and it's like, so it was like March, April, May, June,
we started the year with threats of World War III,
August,
and we still getting them, baby.
August, September, October. It's been 8 months since you moved. Think about that. And then 2 of those months you weren't without internet.
Yeah. 2 of those months I was without decent internet. I kind of made it work in certain areas.
No, I know. Can you believe that was happening? But think about it this way: it's like we're basically done with all the big games, like release season, that we care about. In fact, we thought we were done last week, and then one more really came in like a wrecking ball. We're gonna talk about today. But it was like, now it's done. It's like that entire period that started in March when you moved to now. It's like that entire period's gone now. That 8-month bliss of constant entertainment. It's like now we're out of it. It's like now the desert's in front of us, and I'm kind of sad because I'm like, man, we're never gonna get another like stretch of games like this, especially for games that we actually cared about. It was not a stretch of games. Like, okay, hopefully this is good. Okay, that seems interesting. But it was like, this was the year where our franchises had entries. Almost all of them. They were big enough. They were like, yeah, we've heard of that. We definitely want to try. It's like, it's gonna be bittersweet, especially like with the year that it's also been with the behind the scenes travels and all that. That all of that kind of came together for, man. It's like amazing releases. And will this happen again with many people losing their jobs? I just kind of like want to cross that bridge when we get there, because it's kind of sad to think about like the consequences of everything from this year. But yeah, so like, let's at least celebrate for a little bit more, because this is the X Bottom Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Fridays from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing. Available in the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. And housekeeping, you can listen to, kind of like I mentioned at the top of the show, you can listen to our spoiler cast for Marvel Spider-Man 2 that came out the day after last week's episode posted. That was originally, the main episode was going to be our spoiler cast, but enough things were happening that, kind of like we mentioned, we just kind of wanted to give it more of its own time and not have it like shared the limelight with other stuff that week. But yeah, what's funny is that I'm actually gonna do a follow up to that spoiler because I realized that I have more to say that we didn't really cover because we were on a time crunch when we recorded it, and that's gonna be over at my buddy Sebastian's show. Who I did kind of like reviews in 2023 of the first two games, and we're gonna do this one as a follow up to those. So that should be fun and should be a long conversation, a long recap. So, Paul, we have been playing Alan Wake 2. We both beat Alan Wake 2. You beat it before I did.
I did.
Yeah, you blasted through it. I wanted to savor it because I just knew at the time where we were, it's like after this game was done, this was it. What else was coming? And I didn't want to like blew through that and then be depressed, which you were.
I would like to clarify. I think I was going to be depressed no matter what. The second is that I was a bachelor for the weekend and I got to, I knew I had an opportunity and a window to experience this game 100% through the giant 55-inch screen TV. Giant 55-inch big screen TV. There we go. That's the word. I knew I forgot a word in there. And so that was what I did that whole weekend. I spent a lot more time than I normally do, though, going through it. And even though it felt like I spent less days on it, I feel like I put a lot of hours into it. And what a game that was. Huh.
Yeah.
That was barely a game anymore. Like it sounds so hyperbolic to be like it transcends the medium that it was made in. It's like, all right, buddy, calm down. But on the realness,
it does.
Alan Wake 2 does something super unique. It uses the concept, like the best non-spoiler way I can describe it is imagine if you were playing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and you thought, man, this portal thing where you're kind of running around simultaneously in different worlds, that's really cool. I wonder if somewhere that was like not really as much of a kid's game ever latched onto that concept and really made something interesting with several worlds at the same time, and not the medium, which was another game that tried to do that. We're not talking about that here, though. And Alan Wake 2 is absolutely one of the first games that I would think really pushed it more than a gimmick. And it was like a true powerhouse of a technological exhibit. And it was fantastic.
Yeah. It's this game is 13 years of pent-up creativity that Remedy, the developer, had to keep in before unleashing, because they've been wanting to make this game ever since the first Alan Wake that came out in 2010 came out. Obviously, that game came out. They did like 2 small DLCs. They did like a smaller game in between there called American Nightmare. But it was like Alan Wake was something that the studio really latched onto, that Microsoft eventually was like not interested to continuing because it wasn't a huge seller. So that's kind of when Quantum Break happened, and then how they pivoted away to Control. But Remedy had always been like with that idea, like we miss Alan Wake, we miss it. It's like we feel that we had more to say with that game, especially they were touching on some element. There's something about Alan Wake out of like older games that they've made since Max Payne 1 and 2, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and Control are like the big 5 that. With Alan Wake is where they feel the most creative in their storytelling, or kind of using it as a conduit for for an actual meta narrative about stories, writers, and storytelling, and the nature of storytelling. They barely scratch the surface there, but when you play Alan Wake 2, that is like tackled more than 100% head on. Kind of like all those tiny things that they were scratching Alan Wake in the first Alan Wake. Which did you finish the first one? Because I know you went back to it. Yeah, so
I went back to it after finishing the second one, which I was going to mention a few things about it in relation to this one. But what a way to take 2 very different approaches to the game itself mechanically and somehow knock it out of the park in both times. Because like I wasn't a big Alan Wake original guy. It somehow like came and went past me. I would see it on the shelves and I was like, this doesn't really interest me all that much. And only like way after the fact, hearing all of the good things, getting it the remastered version for free and thinking, nah, I think I'm fine. And then I finally realized I had to go back and revisit it, and boy, was I glad I did.
Yeah.
Because what a weirdly intricate game. Like we likened it to Metal Gear Solid for the old versions,
Yeah.
where just like the physics of things, the way things get knocked over, the way you can move around is so fluid. The dodging mechanics, like it is a fighting game level of hitbox where
Hmm.
I've watched Alan dodge out of the way of one of the axes and it will miss him by just
Hmm.
inches, and like you're good. It feels so intense at all times where it's just this run and gun vibe, with darkness based creepy oogie spooky
You're
action
talking the
going
first or second one?
first
Okay. Mhm. Yeah.
100%.
Hmm.
And then the second one, of course, you have much like more polished words on the second than I could ever really
Hmm.
muster, but at the same time it felt like I sunk into this warm tar pit where I could not get out, but I didn't want to. I
Hmm.
was terrified, and let me clarify, this game is horrifying.
The second one. Yeah.
Yes, the second one.
Hmm.
The first one can have its moments. It's got a couple little spooks here and there, and
Yeah.
little moments where like you think you're safe, and you get one of those NPCs with an axe right behind you, or
Hmm.
the creepy funeral lady that
Yeah.
likes to show up randomly and give you jump scares. But
Hmm.
Alan Wake 2 is 100% like the max I think I could ever handle with like something being scary that's not just like Five Nights at Freddy's or
Hmm.
Outlasts. Like
Yeah.
we're going to go overly
Yeah,
like gory and jump scarish.
it's not even just gore because I don't like the game is bloody, especially because Alan Wake 2
That's what I
went
mean. Like it's
yeah.
not doing that.
Yeah, it's when Alan Wake 2 went M rated, the first one was T rated. So
Hmm.
there is certainly more violence and more startling imagery. I mean, you see a big naked guy at the beginning, like a completely full frontal. You can
I
censor it if you want, but but it's like the game definitely the sequel definitely decided to go into more psychological horror in how it's like it manipulates your reality, what reality can be, the immediate jump scares that you never expect because it's like a quick cutaway of like a great character screaming at you that's like eventually gets really overbearing like in the mid later part of that game in a specific section that it just kept getting like more and louder and louder that to the point that it was like kind of like you could be shaking of everything at a certain point. But it's also funny enough is that there's no real monsters in this game. It's like the scary factor of the second game is similar to the first game. It's just that the way it's presented with like the massive leaps in presentation with the second game on top of the visual quality, which I do feel like now really thinking about it, I think this is currently the best looking game available on anywhere, especially if you're on PC. I've seen some of those screenshots. It's unbelievable how beautiful this thing is, and even on console it's not a slouch either. It's like, yes, there's like some slight image deconstruction jaggies, especially if you're playing on the performance mode, but the visual style and just the entire vibe of literally everywhere you go, from Bright Falls, the main like the main map, to Cauldron Lake, and it's like and it sunsets, then into the dark place, which is kind of like where a lot of like the more cerebral parts are happening, which is where you play as Alan Wake most of the time in the sequel. It's just like the visual punch of everything is like so evocative, and and just a fantastic showcase of Remedy as storytellers. That they are kind of like unsung heroes in video game storytelling because they have always pursued kind of like those filmic qualities, going all the way back to Max Payne, to the point that even it's so funny. Like this game also makes reference to the idea of Max Payne almost pretty literally with the character of Alex Casey, who, if you see the face of the character, that's Sam Blake, the director. So it's like it can be very self-indulgent, but it's like it's so funny when you understand the nature of what Remedy has been doing and pursuing in most of their games with their stylish qualities and storytelling and all that, and how all this game is like an amalgamation of literally everything, kind of like that. The invoice conversations is like that started all the way back in Max Payne.
Hmm.
That obviously kind of like the nature of storytelling alone, that was like all about Alan Wake. The only game that I don't feel is quite represented here, it's Quantum Break, other than kind of like maybe the visual quality style.
There
and
is
an actor,
apparently several references besides the actor.
Yeah, which is Sean Ashmore, which is like who was the main character in that game. But it's like the references are not as overt as everything else, including Control, which is like probably the most direct reference you see in this game, and it's basically this solidifies the RCU, the Remedy connected universe, in a way that works. That if you play Control in 2019, you play this. They're wildly different games, but they both work. They both feel like they're part of they're part of the same universe in a way that I was talking with Rick Hogue, the lawyer that I got that he came into the show like 2 weeks ago. He's a huge Alan Wake fan. That's like a top 5 game for him, and he hated Control, but specifically the storytelling of Control, because Control is very abstract. It's so yeah. Tell me, what's Control about, Paul?
It is about a lady who goes into a building and is somehow gaslit into becoming the director of it, and then has to fix all of the Twilight Zone shenanigans while everybody else acts super pretentious.
Yeah, and that alone is kind of like why Hogue hated Control, because it's like it was both esoteric, surface level, and no depth. Kind of like at least Alan Wake, that really gets into the weeds of what storytelling actually means. It's like those games couldn't be more like more far apart.
Also, like, because Control is such a wide-reaching concept, where Alan Wake is very intimate to him, his life, and his story, and Control is like, oh, you stumbled across the secret environment of the government agency of the FBC, and there's a crap ton of problems going on, but it's like Alan Wake's is all about this one problem happening in this one little zone, and because of how focused it is, I could see why Hogue liked it a lot more.
Yeah, and also there was a certain kind of like weirdness to the dark place in the first game. That was like it was not easily explainable, and sometimes in horror it's cooler when like you really can't explain stuff. In Control made it seem like they were trying to like justify and explain almost everything. They found a perfect middle spot where the existence of the FBC, the Federal Bureau of Control, that's all about like finding this weird stuff, is like doesn't eliminate the mysticism of the dark place, or like what the dark place is. Like both things like work so well, and it just extra enhances the power of the storytelling of Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2, because it's like, you know, that there's kind of like the man of science versus man of faith style of kind of like debates of the weirdness of what's happening in the dark place versus like the things that an agency can see from the outside, and trying to explain the weirdness of kind of like what's happening. And that just makes the storytelling so much more compelling. And even more compelling in Alan Wake 2, their willingness to tone shifts. My God, is like this game is like so damn weird in the best possible ways that I had stupid smiles on how like on how wild some of these things are, especially because it brings together like the mastery of how this game mixes the in-game storytelling with their in-game graphics, like cutscenes to actual FMVs and all of that back and forth, and the marriage of both elements together in a way that they had always been toying around with their games, especially because Control also had live action like TVs that you can watch something if you wanted to. So it's like that's always been something that they always do, but I feel Remedy was like, we've been doing all that, we're gonna master it. So there are just some sequences in this game that are like high up there as some of my favorites from the year, especially we're gonna have a little section of spoilers, people, just so you know, because there's so much about this game that's so awesome that can't quite be talked about without like talking spoilers. But we're gonna let you know like what that is, and when we're gonna go more freewheeling, and I'm gonna timestamp it so you can like move away and listen to the rest of this episode without spoiling yourself if you're interested in playing Alan Wake 2. But Chapter 4 of the Alan Wake side of things. Enough said. That's all I have to say. Is like when that happened, it was like Paul had teased me early on about something based on something that happened in Control that I'm not gonna mention either, because that can give you kind of like an idea. But even if you know the idea, when you get there, like it's like
you're not prepared.
You're not prepared. You're absolutely not prepared. It's like this game is like it's overindulgent in a way that feels earned. We were talking about Spider-Man, that the flashbacks early in that game felt very self-indulgent in a way that didn't add to the game. In fact, was distracting. It felt more like bloat. The indulgence of this game works on the context of the narrative that it's telling. It's like, there's something I was telling you yesterday. It's like, when we think about meta narratives or kind of like breaking fourth walls and all that, when people think about that, they think Deadpool or Joss Whedon. Because when people think about fourth wall breaking, they think of irreverence, like being in on the joke, being like all quippy and quirky about it and all that. I feel like feel like you're ahead of something, you're beyond something, you're making fun of something. That's kind of like what meta narrative has kind of been known in modern times. But Alan Wake 2 is an example of meta narrative being done in a serious way that works, that manages to be in on the joke without ever breaking intentionally the tone of what it's going for, even when it breaks tone. But that's kind of part of like the shape of the story that they're telling in this game, and how that continues to like the story of who Alan Wake is, how he got there, the 13 years he has been trapped in this place ever since the first game finished, and how they deal with that, and kind of like the game makes fun of the fact that he's just a hack writer. And that's like made more. That's like, that was also an element of the first game, and the game and the game Sam Lake, the writers of Remedy, being in on the joke that Alan Wake is not supposed to be this prestigious writer, and that's kind of like part of the text. It adds to the brilliance of Alan Wake, especially with the second game, and then as a survival horror game, I just feel that they did intentional clunkiness compared to the first game. Because the first game was action heavy. It, in fact, controls super well, I would say. Like, it's a very snappy. Alan moves really fast and all that. They had mentioned a lot that they felt that because they come from they were a shooter studio with Max Payne 1 and Max Payne 2. Those were like early examples of great third-person shooting before like the Gears of War era and third-person shooters became more in vogue. Their background made the first Alan Wake more of a shooter than they wanted to. They had said that that's something that was one of their biggest regrets of the first game. If they could go back and tweak stuff, because when you make something more actiony, even if you throw horror stuff, it's not survival horror. And they kind of wanted to put more survival horror into the Alan Wake side of things, and I feel they did that with Alan Wake 2, especially from normal difficulty forward. It's like in normal play in the original. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul. Like, you can down an enemy in like 1 or 2 shots.
Yeah.
After the light, like you use the light, and then 1-2 shots is down.
Later on in the storyline, it starts to take more shots to down the default enemies, and there's more of the larger ones. So then it goes to like 4 or 5 or 6 shots, depending on how you hit it. And it's honestly really imprecise on where you end up hitting on the body, because you aim without a reticle.
Yeah, you use the light.
And unless you're zooming in, you're just kind of like, all right, it's on their body, I'm going to fire. Very old Resident Evil style. But yeah, the to your point, that's it
completely changed.
Pretty easy. Very easy though.
Compared to Alan Wake 2, that takes many hours before you even face one enemy. And then when you face one enemy, normal difficulty, it takes bullets to bring him down. Bullets. And they have also nerfed some mechanics before in Alan Wake 1, only by aiming your flashlight, like just passively, it could start like illuminating the enemies, because obviously the combat mechanic for Alan Wake, its unique combat mechanic is that a lot of the enemies that you face are shadows, that your light takes them out of the shadows for you to be able to kill them. And you could like passively just be like just staring, and if you aimed, that would help sometimes, like at exposing an enemy much quicker. But there was kind of like a rhythm that you didn't always need to be aiming to expose those enemies, and that was kind of like the fast flow state of the combat of the first game. In Alan Wake 2, because it's more of a survival horror thing, now seeing an enemy that's covered in that shadow just by aiming with your flashlight, that doesn't work anymore. You have limited times where your flashlight can have like extra light, that's what exposes it, and it's finite. On top of like the finiteness of your inventory in that game, that you could get screwed if you mess up like being able to use the light to expose an enemy, on top of the on top of the bullet sponginess of some sequences. There was at a certain point, I did try the game is at least very easy to switch difficulty on the fly without penalizing you. So if you're looking into 100%ing it, like to getting a platinum trophy or something like that, and you don't want to deal with maybe headaches of the breathless nature of feeling like you're fighting for your life almost all the time, which is something that I feel this game nailed. You can put it in the story difficulty, which makes the game feel like the first game, or as close as it can. I had a conversation with Gene Park about that on over on Twitter, and he did the same. That it was like, because he had made notice, like, yes, like I like this game, but it's like, am I crazy about the controls? Like, is it like, doesn't it feel clunky? And I'm like, yeah, it feels intentionally clunky. Like they said back in 2021 when they announced this game, they were going to. They said we're doing full on survival horror, and survival horror is about clunkiness, because in that clunkiness, you emerging out of that clunkiness, like you always have to feel breathless. And a lot of sequences, especially when you're playing with Alan Wake in the dark place, like with teleporting enemies, and you're getting overwhelmed, and you're limited, and you only having a handgun and a shotgun and your flare pistol, like you feel breathless, and it definitely feels like part of the normal play of that game is that you're running away. Like it's not about killing everything, and I feel that's exactly what old school Resident Evil was. When you're playing that original Resident Evil, it's not about killing all the zombies. You do that, you're gonna screw yourself by using all your by using all your items. And even then, like in that original Resident Evil game, there was like you would kill zombies and they would come back. Maybe as reds, as those scary red things that would run much faster, that were so horrifying. It's like that was part of the survival horror charm that I feel Alan Wake 2 at least hits. But I can also see people that love the first game's combat taking issue with the slower pace of 2, the harder nature of 2. Like there was an early boss fight, the first boss fight in the game against the dude with the full frontal wiener. That took me a while. He was a bullet sponge. And especially the nature of that boss fight with like the monochromatic like distortions happening, me running out of bullets, me running around trying to find containers to see if those containers would have batteries or more bullets, and me realizing that I screwed myself in that boss fight because I didn't get a shotgun when I could have gotten it, so I did it all with a handgun. I was like, it made it much harder on me. But that's also survival horror. If you're not thorough, the ways the game signposts you could.
I remember Resident Evil 2, where if you didn't find the codes for things, if you didn't find the right combination for a safe, you'd be struggling with no inventory, no weapons, no ammo. Like that's part of the DNA of the horror genre, especially the survival horror genre. So it was. Kind of lost my train of thought there for a second because you talked so long. But it's really impressive how it somehow that's what it was. The fact that you, like you said, you don't fight your first enemy for several hours of the game. It is all about the investigation, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about that side of it.
The Saga Anderson side of things, which is the secondary character of this game, which is technically is the main character. She's the primary character of this game, and in a way, like in the Kojima nature of things, like taking a page of the Metal Gear Solid 2 like idea. Metal Gear Solid 2 is about Solid Snake. It's just not about you playing a Solid Snake, but like the nature of Solid Snake. It's telling a lot about that story. While you play as Alan Wake a lot in this game, it's like it is about the stories he's telling, the stories he's narrating you. Saga Anderson, the character that you use in these investigations while you're in Bradfall, it's kind of like having to deal with their constant writing from Alan Wake as he's shaping a story, and you're trying to play into that story. It's like it's so clever how the game is still like even as you don't play as Alan Wake, you don't feel the oppression of not being able to play as the title main character because of how the story tells this tale.
How his cohort is far less pretentious than he is, so it's kind of nice to listen to her inner monologue as opposed to his. But on the real side, there's something that feels so different of like hearing, I don't know, playing as like the member of the FBI, where like she's smart and you know that she can handle herself, as opposed to Alan, who is
Mm-hmm.
just like a guy
Bumbling. Yeah, he's a
who
bumbling idiot.
writes and like picked up a gun and a flashlight and is surviving at the barest skin of his teeth. But the best thing, I think, the way I described it to you once, was that while Saga is trying to like press forward,
Mm-hmm.
taking ground, pushing in, Alan is running and
Yeah.
running and running. The entirety of it is like a pure opposite dichotomy between the way both of them play, where like Alan somehow has to avoid and run away from most of his problems, even
Mm-hmm.
though most of them can teleport faster than he can run.
Yeah.
So that was a whole thing. But like Saga's, there's only one enemy type in her whole thing that ever
Mm-hmm.
teleports, and they never teleport toward her. They
Mm-hmm.
teleport away or to the side to throw something at you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a completely different vibe for that whole thing. The way I do have to mention before I forget, just the way the investigation is laid out in this
The
game.
mind palace or whatever the thing's called.
Yeah, the mind room is what she
Mind room,
calls
huh?
it. But the fact that you can not only somehow visualize and gamify the concept of like a detective figuring out pieces and parts of something. It's like, did you ever watch the TV show Psych?
Yeah, I remember Psych. Yeah.
So you know, like the whole idea where his whole thing is he looks at something and then it highlights it. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
pictured that the whole time, where she would look
Yeah.
at something and you click on it. You don't have to like I don't know, I have to explain it outside of like, you don't have to do the work of like the boring part of the investigation. All
Mm-hmm.
you have to do is put it together, and then half the time you're figuring out things faster than Saga does.
Yeah.
And that's like the signs of a really good mystery, where you're putting it together, you're figuring out little pieces of it. And that's not to also say that you are going to be completely thrown for a loop and like plot twisted to hell and back, literally.
Yeah. And
With
when you
how
have it
crazy
all,
it is.
and because this game is all about the string theory of like being able to like connect everything, it also helps you kind of keep track of where things are, because this is a very complex tale that it's telling, especially with the weirdness of everyone and in the place where you are thinking something different, or not like not being part of the same reality that you came into the original town with, and seeing like how that has changed, and you're trying to figure those pieces out. It's really the mind palace really helps to do that, because it's very brave, I would say, especially because we haven't seen detective work done like this since LA Noire, and even LA Noire was very that game specifically hinged too much on the you interrogating people and seeing if they were telling the truth, half truth, or a lie, and kind of like that weird in between that was kind of broken, especially because it was all about like that. It was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna tell you something, and you have to see like that, and it was
They have this really obnoxious face going on.
yeah, because obviously they were back in the day, they were trying to do something new with technology, which I can appreciate, but I do understand the idea, because you sometimes know when someone's like lying, like what their facial expressions can be. But in that game, it felt a little too overly animated in a way that was too comical, and then at the same time it was very inconsistent. So the detective work was flawed in that detective heavy game, in a way that at least the detective side of a game like Alan Wake 2 feels intentionally pared back, very like straightforward with what it needs to be. Sometimes can be really confusing, because I constantly have to go into you can be like, what the hell am I supposed to do? I'm like, the mind, go back to your mind room, connect the dots, and keep like string theory, have your inner monologue conversations, kind of like read the profile of the different people, and kind of have that kind of like mental conversation with some of the different people you interact with. And again, a showcase of like the beautiful storytelling techniques of like just when the room turns green and you see Saga and kind of like the live action things just playing in the background, and kind of like the more muffled of the voices. Like, it's such a presentational marvel, this game. It's like that's like what it's like. It's a hard game to put down. It can sometimes be very exhausting in some ways, because the survival horror games are inherently exhausting, but the level of presentation of this game and mixing all those little details makes you super engrossed, especially like when with a story as intricate as this one, as interesting as this one, and looking as beautiful as it does. And for a game that just nails the survival horror fundamentals, this is the best game I played this year, Paul. in an amazing year of games. But the surprise of how good this was and kind of all of this this reminds me in a way to what Elden Ring did to From Software last year, bringing like that studio's entire catalog into like a master stroke. And I feel Alan Wake 2 is that for Remedy. Like seeing all of that, it's like I was like left. Dude, I spent until 3 a.m. yesterday trying to beat it. Obviously because I wanted to see if I could finish it before we recorded, but I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't enjoying myself. And so in some moments we gotta talk. Yeah, we're gonna start spoilers. People, check the notes now, and then you can check. You can check the timestamp when we're ending. So spoilers start now. The freaking
now they're starting.
Yes.
I thought we've been talking spoilers this whole time.
No, we barely talk spoilers.
It's a good thing that I haven't really said anything spoilery.
No, you really haven't. You really haven't. It's like, come on. I mean, come on,
The Rock by accident.
Yeah, but I wouldn't consider that spoiler like what you just said. But like now, like the freaking rock and roll thing at the at the end, of like the waves coming in and the old Asgard's guy, and when you're fighting all those monsters. Like earlier, I mentioned chapter 4. The fourth chapter being a musical that tells Alan Wake's entire story with like a mix of live action like performances by David Harewood, the actor that plays Alan Wake, the old Asgard bands, which they get to play with you like in the normal area. And you had mentioned that part was the ashtray maze of that of that game, but because it's like a game, a section very defined by music, but I feel that one took it further because the thing that made Ashtray Maze so cool was because it was a fun combat sequence in a cool environment, and the rock and roll song at the background was a really cool moment. This is way different because that musical was like storytelling. In fact, if you never played the original one,
that's like exposition.
It's exposition.
It explains exactly what had happened to that point at the same time as being a confrontation. Being sort of a breather from some heavy, like early stage horror that we were dealing with. I mean, we just probably fought, I think you said the two guys that kept crawling out of the well. Yeah. So it was like this, all of a sudden you're like, big breather, you can enjoy yourself. But also one of the reasons why I called it the Ashtray Maze is because while it starts off as very like, there's a puzzle and it's mostly walking through for exposition, by the end, you are getting a ton of these flare gun ammo. You are fragging out with all of what you have to this crazy guitar solo, just shooting everything left and right. You've got a ton of ammo, and then you never see something like that again until like the end of Saga. But Alan, I would say that's the only time you get the most resources as Alan and like his whole portion of the game, which is kind of why I was thinking like, oh, it's like the Ashtray Maze where they give you this like tight, cramped,
empowering moment,
rock album, just shoot everything, blow everything out. The way that all of that played out,
while it's still telling the Alan Wake story and in the background. So it's kind of like the idea of the Ashtray Maze taken into the next level in a way more creative way, and everyone that participated in that entire sequence, like they were having a ball with, because you see the actors, the real life actors, like just fully fully in,
having the most fun.
Especially at the end when you think it's almost over and it just keeps going, and then it goes into like the talk show and they are doing like the musical dance number. I was like, man, this is like so brilliant. The entire motif of the talk show also is like that's kind of how some of the initial
Mr. Door.
Yeah, with the Mr. Door guy, it's like, oh man, it's like there's so many like clever like analogs to the story, like in how they were presenting it. Everything with Tom Sane, when you entered the big hotel, that it's like one of the creepiest moments in this entire game. Well, and we're back now, like after the Dark Place tried to like interrupt us a little bit. That seemed very, very meta, but yeah, it's like everything about the talk show, and I think I was mentioning the hotel with Tom Sane, like when you go there, and how that's like one of the clear examples, like probably one of the cooler things that happens when you're playing as Alan is because Alan also has his mind place, which is the writer's room, and you go into like his board,
Yep.
and you manipulate the environment like through his writing, where he like writes a different scene for a specific place, and it immediately changes right in front of your eyes, and that's kind of part of a progression that happens with this game. And some of the horrifying stuff that happens in that side, like when you're pursuing the devil, Mr. Scratch, in the hotels, like there was like some really startling imagery as you start like unraveling some of the mystery of this cult of the word, and the nature of Mr. Scratch. And I would say like you could figure out something about Mr. Scratch like really early, and the game still managed to surprise me. It'd be like, huh, interesting, like because obviously there's a point in the story where you see Alan Wake leaps the dark place. That's kind of where you meet him when you're playing a Saga after the early hours. But then around that time, that's when the game allows you to switch. If you go to a bathroom and there's like kind of like a janitor leak, that's how you can switch chapters. If you want to be like, no, I want to play as Alan now, or I want to play as Saga. And so and then it's like when you're switching to Alan, you're like, okay, why am I going to Alan if he's outside? But then at a point it's like, oh, it makes sense, especially when you realize it's like the big villain is Mr. Scratch, which is like a representation of the Dark Place and the Dark Place entity that has been hunting Alan since American Nightmare, and one of the last two, I think it was the second DLC from the main game. That introduced Mr. Scratch, the idea of Mr. Scratch, and then obviously it's like, oh yeah, Mr. Scratch is the one that's outside. So of course it's like the evil one was the one that got out, and our hero is still like trapped there. You just didn't realize that like later on it's like no, it's like there's some time manipulation happening in this game, where it was like it was our Alan all along, displaced and possessed, and those elements really hit. You had mentioned to me that there was like something later in the game that you found really emotional. I found two of those moments. One,
yes,
one was the fate of Alice, his wife, that he goes to the dark place in the first game, and then you realize in like the videos that you find from her are basically like a suicide note. When that happened, I was like, damn, but it wasn't. So
it wasn't, because I think I must be out of sync with you.
Yeah, you're like freezing. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, are you? But you're not frozen now.
Everything's good on my end.
Yeah,
you haven't even frozen at all to me. It's just all of a sudden, I guess, somehow my side.
Yeah, your side froze. It's like I feel like I'm talking to Alan Wake at this moment. This is so funny. But yeah, it's like the reveal of the wife, but then how that game touches on inner monologue when you're in the final chapter with Saga in the mine room, and you're kind of like putting like all the different things, and you're basically putting all her insecurities on the board. And I was like, holy crap, that's usually how it feels if you're someone that suffers from self-doubt. Those are the kinds of inner monologues that you happen, and I found that super effective. I don't know if that was the thing that you were referencing, but when that was happening, I was like, damn. It's like through the game's mechanics, like using the same mechanics that you've been doing the entire game in the mines, in your investigations as Saga, like to be able to kind of like hit some emotional nerve of inner fear, inner dialogue, and how they presented it was like so cool. Like, and again, kind of like the power of this game, because think about it this way: in a Kojima game, I only thought of Sam trapped on the beach at the end of the Stranding when Amelie's preaching at you, and how that entire section is about you trying to commit suicide, to be like to relieve me from this torture. Imagine if Kojima had made like a section like this, that it would have been a little bit more ponderous. But in Alan Wake 2, like that final section was like all through the exact same mechanics. Is still like inherently using the mechanics of this video game to be able to like convey something like that still made sense with like what it tells about the nature of stories and heroes, and the failure of a hero, or the nature of like a horror story, or like the ultimate denouement of a horror story. It's like it touches on literally all of that in a way that if you've ever been interested in writing story or any stories, like Alan Wake 2 really is like a really sharp commentary on what it's like to be a writer. And it's so
I want to add some stuff into that, but am I cutting out again?
No, you're not.
Okay, so warn me if I start because I want to try to like uninterruptedly.
Mm-hmm. And you cut.
The son of a gun. Am
Now,
I out again?
yeah,
Okay,
now you're
I'm
back.
So I want to get some uninterrupted thoughts in before I
Yeah.
start cutting in and out like Alan
Mhm.
himself.
Incredible.
Essentially, the one thing that I really loved emotionally wise about that whole thing was, like you said, when Saga's in the mind place, she's getting like the worst of all of this process is spreading. Everybody's considering her daughter to be dead, which
Mhm.
is like the sign that she's failing. She tries to finally call her husband acts like they've been divorced for several years, and it's like her whole reality is starting to shift, and she's the only person that believes the truth out of this, but she's
Mhm.
being gaslit at every turn by
Mhm.
everybody going like, died and your husband's gone and you came here in disgrace and all that stuff, and it is visualized on the board. Everything you try to put up, every clue, like everything is wiped out from her clues, her files are gone. You're putting things up there, and like it's things like intrusive thoughts essentially in such a perfectly visualized way, where it's like, you let your daughter die, you're a terrible detective, your friends don't actually like you, you're a horrible. And it's like all of these things that all of us tell ourselves constantly, and the way that she keeps fighting through that, and then the only way she can beat it is not by putting more stuff on the board, because that just at a certain point keeps looping you,
Mhm.
but you have to go around and find small positive things that are
Yeah.
physically around you
Mhm.
to gain the strength to keep going. And like the fact that she finds a commendation from the FBI, she finds a picture of her buddy
Mhm.
Alex Casey, she finds um,
Letters
her
from her
daughter's,
daughter. Yeah.
yes, letters from her daughter, and all of this stuff together. She starts laying it down on the board, and it like undoes the other work, because it's like, clearly I'm worth it, because like I might not be perfect, but I'm doing a decent job, I'm trying my best, I that's all I can do, I can't expect to
It's
be
what I was saying.
perfect.
It's what I was saying.
And
It's so incredible the entire
I'm
sequence.
over here just like, I get racked with fear constantly and things. And when Saga was like finally finished it all and opened the door, and she was like, I might be afraid and that's okay, but I can't let it stop me from trying. And I was like, let's
Mhm.
go. Like that was so hype for something so intimate and small, and for
Mhm.
it being like an emotional turning point for somebody. I mean, it's like, I don't want it to just blindly compare it to the "You are not Ifrit, I am" from Final
Mhm.
Fantasy 16, but
Yeah.
without the bombast, it has a very similar emotional connection to me, with that like owning who you are
Mhm.
and pushing past that. And then on top of it, you get like this crazy rock concert at a beach where you just shotgun dudes in the
Yeah.
face and stuff, and all
Yeah.
of this other stuff that goes on during that process, and everything else that goes on. And like, I like to think that I'm a writer sometimes as well,
Mhm.
and the all of the stuff that Alan goes through, the constant like rewriting things, it has to be perfect, like the
Mhm.
perfectionism that hits you, and then feeling like all of a sudden you have no desire to write. It feels like there's something in your head stopping you almost. It is
Mhm.
just, there's so many levels you could take it to, and angles that you can come at it from depending on where you are in your life or what you're interested in.
Mhm.
And it hits the same emotional through line so well as so many other things. And then on top of it, you have just this crazy gameplay shift with different genres of the game being played out in front of you. The tech masterpiece, how gorgeous it is. And it's just like the perfect blend of just about everything. And I was not expecting what we got out of Alan Wake 2, but I guess to put a little bow on it, I am
Mhm.
so glad that I got to experience that. And one day, probably in the next few months, I'm going to absolutely play it again.
New Game Plus. Like we're waiting for Spider-Man for him because another game that didn't decide to launch with New Game Plus immediately. It's sad, but yeah, it's like this and Armored Core 6 are like the two big surprises for me this year, and that my anticipation for other games was like much higher than this one, but these were like the two games that I have come out loving more than many of the ones that I was anticipating. And part of me that's kind of like the beauty of gaming, being able to find surprises, things that you know you're not gonna you're going to love just because. That was kind of like one of the things that was probably like a holdback from this year, that you knew many of the games that you were gonna play you were gonna love. Maybe you were gonna love a little bit more or a little bit less, like what happened to you with Spider-Man, but it's like you knew what you were getting. Alan Wake 2 and Armored Core 6 are the two from this year that I'm like, I was not expecting I was gonna get that, and that I was gonna come out of them feeling like this. Like, now I have to go write a review after we're done recording with this for Alan Wake 2, and I have to like see if I can not just endlessly gush about it, because it's just there's just so much about this wonderfully unique video game. But enough of talking about Alan Wake 2. I have some brief thoughts on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. The campaign unlocked today, actually. So I got to try the first 5 missions. I went to look at the list. There's actually 5 missions. And as someone that was not a big fan of last year's Modern Warfare 2 campaign, I thought it was like a little vapid, a little trying to hit the greatest hits, but not doing it as well. And the few original things that they were doing were not working. And it was kind of boring, and it was not paced well. It was like some even cooler levels overstayed their welcome, like that car level that you're like jumping, and then it's like,
I remember
ruined by the controls.
So cool, and then like because of how long it lasted,
yeah, you're like, I'm tired of this. Yeah, so it's like, so in comparison, Modern Warfare 3 campaign and the 5 missions that I played, they all feel perfectly lengthy. It's like at no point I'm like, I'm tired of this. It feels better paced. Tonally, at least, it's like still going in the right direction that I want out of it. Like, I've always been very vocal that one of the things that I don't like about the 2019 campaign was its very self-serious, pretentious nature about like war crimes, and like it's like the out of the headlines kind of things. And for a game that then like when you're actually playing is like it's like this is a little too self-serious for the kind of game that this really is. And Modern Warfare 2 was better tonally, but it had worse levels. I feel like this one has hit a better middle ground, even though you sometimes see how this originally was gonna be DLC for the last game, because that's how we learned about this year's Call of Duty was premium expansion for Modern Warfare 2, but they realized that, oh, people don't like that game, we got to move on quickly, we can't like keep tethering it to the to the old one, and improve movement, all that. And you can kind of feel that more when you go into the big headline feature of this campaign, which is like the sandbox open levels, which is like they even have a name, the open combat missions, that's what they call them. So basically it's like you're thrown into a Warzone map. It's like if you're playing single player Warzone, there's story and all that, but it's like you have a big Warzone map. Like the mechanics are if you're like playing Warzone, like putting the plates in, looting boxes, you can like use a rappel to like jump up like a big rope. You can parachute everywhere. It's like it brings the gameplay for Warzone into like a Call of Duty campaign. And I tell you, Paul, is like I'm kind of shocked how well it works in the context of single player. Like removed from like battle royales or even the Spec Ops mode from 2019, like being able to play this game like in such an open way that I know for a fact the way I did the third level, which is called Reactor, which is in a nuclear facility, other than like the final moment of that game that is very scripted, I don't think you're gonna approach how I approached it, that I was like just rambling my way out of things. So it's like the objective, go destroy 3 helicopters. How you gonna do that? You figure it out, and you can actually do that. And in the last one, like I reached a point where I was trying to do stealth, but I feel this game has Assassin's Creed Valhalla problems of stealth, that it feels like it's kind of hard. You're gonna be seen so quickly, but you're not penalized by it. You just kind of go for it. And I had a helicopter pursue me as I'm running through this like nuclear reactor, and then I saw like a big tall building that I could rappel myself up because there was like a big rope there, and because you have a parachute that as part of like the mechanics of Warzone, that as soon as you have some distance, if you press the jump button, you can like put it up. I was like, oh, I see the helicopter, the final one that I have to destroy. I'm gonna jump in, and then I immediately like jumped in, like the helicopter's like shooting at me as I'm parachuting my way in, and I caught my parachute. I have my C4s as I'm cutting it in. I throw 2 of them, put my parachute on again, and just fly into like a container to hide myself in and activate activate the C4, destroy that, and then you run into the middle building as I have like another helicopter show up, just shooting, and I'm being like surrounded by enemies, and I'm just like booking it and trying to shoot my way. It's like, it's so exciting because it's all that's all that I did. That's kind of like some of the beauty of being able to do open gameplay like this, because you can tell this kind of like crazy stuff. And it's so funny to me to think about this as, in the context of this was DLC before it got blown up as a full game, that some of the other, like, the difference between those open combat missions and the normal missions is like very stark, to the point it's like the way that the game controls in the normal missions is straight up the mechanics from Modern Warfare 2, and in the open missions it feels like Modern Warfare 3. Do you know what it feels like if you played the beta from a few weeks ago with the new, like, being able to aim to the side, and like as you're like sliding, and the speed and the speed of movement, you feel that? It's like, that's so weird that it's like they have these two kinds of missions like interspliced together.
Can you do the weird aiming
in normal missions?
by itself?
In normal missions, just in the open combat missions, it's like you feel it in the way those levels look in the visuals, because it's like grander. So obviously fidelity kind of takes a little bit of a hit, but in like the more linear levels, like they look prettier, but like movement is way slower. It still has some of the things that I didn't like about the Modern Warfare 2 campaign. The enemies with armor are back.
Play as the same character for all of it?
No, different ones. You actually play as Farah, you play as Price also.
Oh, that's right, you did tell me that.
Yeah.
I was trying to see if there was some kind of connection that they made narratively,
No.
in air quotes. Okay, I was
No,
like,
literally,
they
yeah,
could've
literally.
really done something with that. But
No, literally, yeah, kind of like no. It's funny because the second mission, which is the first open combat mission, is with Farah, and you start only with a knife. You can do that entire mission just with a knife and try to stealth your way out if you wanted to. And then the third mission is with Price in the nuclear reactor thing, and then the fourth mission is with Price again. But again, it's like, oh yeah, it's like I could do all this movement in his mission in open combat just a mission ago. Now in this one, like when I'm sliding, I can't slide cancel. So it's like there's elements where you can really see the seams of how they intersplice enough stuff to try to like make a bigger headline that, oh yeah, this is not just more Modern Warfare 2. It's like, this is what we added. And I would say, like, even though you can see how it could be seen as lazy, it's like, oh yeah, these maps are totally, I've seen this map in the ground war mode, especially the third mission. Is like they had that exact same map in ground war during the beta. I played it, so I was like, oh yeah, they're reusing assets. But ironically, by reusing those assets, the campaign in a way feels fresher than Call of Duty has felt in a while. And the last mission I played before we started recording is a stealth mission where you disguise yourself and you're walking around and all that. So it's another one of those missions. So it's like they hit you with the variety really quickly, but the levels don't overstay their welcome either. And they even throw you a juggernaut in the fourth level, like like in the middle, like a couple of juggernauts that you have to fight in. It's just like I'm having fun with the campaign, at least early on. That I don't remember having as much fun with last year's campaign. Last year's campaign, I was struggling to feel engaged. It was like, oh yeah, I'm finally hitting a crescendo. Oh god damn, it's like the level keeps on going and going. It's like everything cool is, or even the sniper. Remember that stupid sniper mission with the broken AI? Yep. The fourth level is a riff on that mission, but done much better in Modern Warfare 3. So even though it's with the Modern Warfare 2 mechanics, it's like at least there's improvement there. And the only thing that I'm now missing about this package is the zombie mode. I already played the multiplayer. Like I already have my fill. I know what that multiplayer is gonna be like. Obviously they've simplified it better. Like some of those maps are cool to have back. Yeah, some of them don't read as well with the new engine. But they were doing stuff visually that they're gonna try to fix that. So definitely gonna hold on verdict for that, because that's another of my upcoming reviews. But so far, 5 missions in with the Modern Warfare 3 campaign, I like it way more than I did last year's. So I can't wait for you to try it. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah, enough of that, Paul. We got a few news to talk about, so
press X
for some news. And story number 1. Since we were talking about Alan Wake and Remedy, let's stick in the Remedy realm. Story by Wesley LeBlanc from Game Informer. Remedy provides update on Control 2, says Max Payne remakes are in production readiness stage. Remedy Entertainment released Alan Wake 2 last week, and both fans and critics alike seem to be pleased with the long-awaited sequel. And now, just a few days later, the studio has provided some updates to some games it has in development, including Control 2 and its remakes of Max Payne 1 and Max Payne 2. In its latest earnings report for the third quarter of 2023, Remedy says Alan Wake 2 launched with great reception, laying the foundation for the future. Although with the game having just launched, it has nothing to share on the financial performance of the game. However, the studio says we continue enhancing Alan Wake 2 with new updates and developing the 2 announced expansions to the game, adding that Alan Wake 2 marks the first of many great new game launches enabled by our multi-project model, which we have built over the years. Regarding those other games, Remedy has revealed that Condor, its cooperative multiplayer game, has progressed from the proof-of-concept stage to a production readiness stage, stating it has acquired valuable insights into developing service-based games and are now in a better position to create a game players can engage with for years. Codenamed Vanguard, Remedy's multiplayer game it's making in partnership with Tencent, it's set to hit the proof-of-concept stage by the end of the year. In April of last year, the studio revealed it was remaking Max Payne and Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne, after striking a deal with Rockstar Games, which holds the rights to the series. Now, a year and a half later, Remedy says Max Payne 1 and 2 remake, which is a single game, has progressed into the production readiness stage. We have gained clarity on the style and scope of the game, and we have an exceptionally well-organized team working on it. The earnings report says, with these accomplishments, we're excited about the project and its future success. And finally, Remedy's earnings report state that Control 2 continues to be in the proof-of-concept stage. The plans for the sequel are ambitious, and we have seen good progress both in the designs and in the game build, it reads. We have acquired valuable insights into developing service games too, also in that one, and are now in a better position to create game players can engage with for years. Interesting stuff. Remedy says that with Alan Wake 2 launch, all 4 of these upcoming games will benefit from the additional talent transferring from Alan Wake 2, as it will enable the teams to take the necessary steps towards the next stages of development. So, if you're a big Remedy fan, you have a lot coming from them, because they have built their studio to be able to support all of this.
I am truly impressed at how Remedy just came out of the gate swinging, because I don't know, I'm just like a little blind or deaf, but I feel like we weren't hearing a whole lot from them besides like, hey, we're working, and hey, Alan Wake 2 is going to come out soon, and then they just dropped that, and now they're like, all right, we're going to open the floodgates and tell you all of these things that we've got planned now, because Alan Wake 2 just crushed it.
Yes.
So good for them.
Yeah, and the thing is that what's interesting about Remedy is that they used to be a studio that could only work on one game and they would take forever. So like, for example, Max Payne and Max Payne 2 came out in like 2001 or 2004 around that time, and then they announced Alan Wake in like 2005, and it came out in 2010. It took them that long because that was a game that they also had to scale back because it was supposed to be an open world game, a la GTA, that the scope of what they were trying to do was like got away from them, and they had to like cut it into something a little bit more linear. But you see some elements of the open world nature of that first Alan Wake when you play the original.
Because you can drive in Alan Wake 1 and over a decently sized space of land. It's, I wouldn't quite say maybe like Battlefield Bad Company 1 kind of size, but like it's decent. Like you're covering some distance there.
Yeah, so it was like, imagine it was used to be more ambitious, and then you can see more of that original ambition being recreated on 2, but that was a game that took them a long time, especially because then it eventually became a Microsoft exclusive, because it was originally announced for PS3 and 360, and then Microsoft kind of snatched exclusivity for that in the 360 era. Then obviously that game didn't sell as well as it could have because it launched the same day as Red Dead 1 back in 2010, so... Can you imagine that?
No wonder.
So, yeah. So that's when then Microsoft decided to kind of walk away from the Alan Wake IP despite the DLCs and American Nightmare. And then Quantum Break was announced in 2013, came out in 2016 for the Xbox One. And that game was kind of like at the forefront of Xbox's TV initiative that they abandoned so quickly.
Yeah, that's weird.
So yeah, and especially with Remedy being like so big in live action, it was like, oh, like Xbox wants to do like a TV initiative for their next console, and we have kind of like those trappings. Let's do a game that takes full advantage of that. So obviously that's why we got Quantum Break with the big cool action shooter, and then 20-30 minutes of an episode, because there were 5 episodes of this TV show that were intertwined with your gameplay, and you needed to watch them if you wanted to understand anything in that game. And they recently, because I reinstalled Quantum Break on the Xbox on the Series S, and before you could only watch the cutscenes as they were being streamed directly through the Xbox store, and then because they canned that system, you can now download those cutscenes natively, but it's 75 gigs of video on top of the 45 of just the game. So it's a big hefty file size because of the stupid TV show. So then Quantum Break didn't really sell well because it was in the Xbox One. No one cared about the Xbox One at that time. So then they moved to Control. That was going to be like, yeah, we want to do a multi-platform game again, and we want to see if we can do it on the cheap, and kind of like and start setting up the foundation for all of this. Control hit. It didn't sell a lot initially, but Control is a game that sold a lot like over time with the re-release and like word of mouth and all that. And because it was done on the cheap, they got amazing profit. Do you know they made it like in $30 million? That's nothing. Dang. That's like super cheap. Obviously, work that they made it in Finland or wherever the Remedy is in. So it was like, obviously, like costs are different, but they were able to make a lot of profit with that game and re-releasing it. And then Sam Lake had mentioned that they didn't want to just be doing one project at a time, that they wanted to set a development cadence to be able to do many things at the same time. And that's around the time that they reacquired the Alan Wake IP from Microsoft, because they were like, you're not doing anything. Like, we're going to buy it from you. And they were able to do that. And that's how we got the remastered in 2021. And that's how we got the sequel. Because they set the foundation after Control and they did the DLC, that then by the time they required the IP, they announced Alan Wake 2 in 2021 at the Game Awards. 2 years later, they put it out. And look how quickly they put it out and how great of a game it is. And that they have all these projects now. There's two of them concern me a little bit. Like, there's the one with Tencent that I'm like, yeah, it's like every time that I hear that you're working with Tencent on something, it's like, that can get weird. And they did, because they did this as a favor. Xbox acquired exclusivity of Crossfire X, like the multiplayer, but they kind of wanted to make it like a bigger deal. So they asked them, hey, can you help us with doing like a campaign for this bad game? And Remedy took a bag and did a campaign of that game, but because it was tied on a bad game, it was just bad overall. So, but that was part of like the multi-nature of their studio now, that there's like they're working on all these games now, and with the quality and success, I hope Alan Wake 2 was also done fairly cheap, like Control, because I don't know, I don't know, like especially with Alan Wake 2 when it came out, I don't know if it's gonna be like a huge sales success either, but I would hope it is. I would have like right now this game has strong word of mouth, very very strong on top of the reviews. Is the best reviewed Remedy game ever. So, and Remedy always reviews well, no matter what. So, Quantum Break is the only one that reviewed lower in comparison, but
it's justifiably, I would say, because I don't think there's really any.
Yeah, Quantum Break's their weakest game.
Even all of these years later, I have had no desire to go back to Quantum Break. Like the gameplay looks cool, but especially now that they've made Control, it's basically like it's better Quantum Break. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like Control, like Quantum Break flirted with the powers, the power fantasy. Control just embraced it. It was like at that point, it's like, why would you like do it? Why would you go back to that one out of just curiosity? I would say from a presentation and graphics quality, like Quantum Break is really interesting. It's what set the foundation to how their games look now. So there's something for it. It's like, and it's been a while. I haven't played it since 2016. That's why I reinstalled it. So maybe I'll get it to try it whenever I'm done with Modern Warfare 3. So, and just as a follow-up to Remedy stuff, story number 2 moving over to VGC, story by Jordan Miller. Alan Wake's creative director wants to make a crazy, huge budget, dark gothic fantasy game. Speaking in a new interview with GQ, the veteran developer was asked if he'd like to do anything else with his life, following his multi-decade career in games. Would I ever do anything else? Yeah, I'm still thinking that I will, he said. There will be a time when I retire, it's just that this has all been so engaging. One was this crazy, huge budget, dark gothic fantasy, which I haven't used for anything yet. Lake, real name Samian Terajarvi, has served as creative director at Remedy Entertainment for decades, working on Max
His real
Payne.
name isn't Sam Lake?
No, it's Samian Terajarvi.
I never realized that.
Yeah, of course he would go for it with a pseudonym. It's cool, Sam Lake.
Yeah.
And he liked my tweet today, by the way. So,
Big
yeah,
win.
yeah. So working on Max Payne, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and Control. He also famously provided his face for the in-game model of Max Payne in the early titles, and he also provides his face for Alex Casey in Alan Wake, which is funny because Alex Casey is an analog to Max Payne. In fact, he has mentioned if he had the Max Payne IP, Max Payne would have been in the game, and Max Payne would have been the novel that Alan Wake wrote.
Oh man,
That's kind of That's kind of like the idea. That's why like the Alex Casey of it all is like it's based on their idea of Max Payne. That's kind of like where those references come in, especially with him giving him the face, which is the face of Max Payne. So
I just kind of thought it was like, all right, it fits, but I didn't think it was going to be like a direct Max Payne thing. But man, I hope that they can one day get more to make more with Max Payne. And unfortunately, their competition is Rockstar, who is greedy and never wants to give up anything.
Yeah, but hey, they are working with Rockstar to do those remakes. So at least they're talking. So
at least that's something. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, so yeah, a crazy huge budget dark gothic fantasy game. I tell you, after Alan Wake 2, if they're able to make this game, holy crap, that would be amazing. Just on the filmic nature of how they do games. It's like, to me, it's like they're like how I see it, just how The Last of Us kind of set a template for the third-person action-adventure story-based game that we know, kind of like the narrative-heavy base. I feel Alan Wake 2 shows like how you can level up the storytelling of that kind of game. Like, it's just so much more compelling because it's so uniquely a video game, while at the same time, like, being a film and like transcending its medium into being all these different things. That they have always strived for that. They hit that sweet spot with Alan Wake 2. It's like it's such a reference, and he's always had him. They always had it in them. That's why I say Alan Wake 2 is like their master, like their magnum opus, because that's where they nailed that. And any game following from that's gonna be a doozy. So.
I don't know what they're going to do next, but I'm all here for it. As somebody who wasn't really, like, I would say I was a casual fan of all that and Remedy stuff, and I played through the old Max Payne games back on PC when I could get them on Steam. But now I feel like I'm like sitting up, and I was like, all right, you had my curiosity, now you have my attention.
Yeah. They've always been like, to me, Remedy has been like what Insomniac had been like, a consistently great developer that was always being overshadowed by others around them. But I'm like, Alan Wake 2 feels like their breakout, like their absolute breakout. So I really hope that still resonates because it's like they're doing great work. It's like I'm really, really impressed with their game. Story number 3, Paul. Going back to Game Informer, this is a story by Marcus Stewart. Wolverine game set in the same universe as Marvel's Spider-Man, Insomniac confirms. Since Insomniac revealed its Wolverine game 2 years ago, which is insane, that feels a long time ago, fans have wondered if it's set in the same universe as the studio's Spider-Man games. In an interview with Kinda Funny, Spider-Man 2 director Brian Intihar confirmed the answer is yes. When host Greg Miller asked if it had been previously confirmed or denied whether or not their spin-off on Wolverine shared the same Earth as Spider-Man, Intihar replied by saying they're all 1048. I think I got that right, but yeah. Intihar is referring to Earth 1048, which is the designation of the Marvel Universe Insomniac superhero games occupy. And you can see, and you can kind of see the reference to that universe on Across the Spider-Verse when you see during the place where all the Spider-Mans are, and you see a cameo of the game. So whether or not that means we'll see any Spider-Man references in Wolverine, which does not have a release window, remains to be seen. But that's exciting news regardless. Marvel Spider-Man's New York City is chock full of reference to other heroes, such as Avengers Tower, the Sanctum Sanctorum, and the Wakandan Embassy, so it made more sense to imagine Logan doing his thing somewhere out there. And also, people found the Daredevil, like
they did a patch that added their building back in and references to the hand.
The hand, so yeah, it's like, I can't wait for them to say more about Spider-Man 2. Like, I told us, like, we knew about the city that never sleeps before Spider-Man 2018 came out. They didn't do the same with this one, so I'm like, obviously they better give me that damn New Game Plus soon because I'm itching to play that game again, but I don't want to start from scratch. But
because it doesn't feel great going from from scratch. Even playing like the default enemies, and like I did the ultimate difficulty, and I didn't really have any issues. But at the same time, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, because you get a taste of how good it is after everything. It's like that the upgrade, like more than 2018, Spider-Man 2 is like full upgrade suite really changes the feel of everything, especially for Peter.
Much.
Because I keep saying it's like Peter with his spider legs early on with no upgrades sucks, absolutely sucks, especially in comparison to Miles. It's until he gets further upgrades or the same that he feels good. So that's why I can't wait for the New Game Plus, because I would love to be able to use those spider legs and for them to feel so good at the beginning. That would feel cool.
Yes.
So
I feel like the upgrades made the spider legs a lot better.
Exactly. But again, it's kind of like a problem with their balance.
And the gadgets.
Yes.
The gadgets were also way better.
But that's why Miles felt better at the start. He didn't need power, like he didn't need upgrades for like his Venom powers to feel good from moment one. So, but enough for Spider-Man. Story number 4, staying with Game Informer's Wesley LeBlanc. Lies of P sequel confirmed. DLC teased with 2 new images. Lies of P launched back in September to both critical and fan acclaim. After a September patch that included various changes to make the Souls-like action RPG easier, game director Jiwon Chua has released a director's letter to confirm plans for a Lies of P sequel, teased DLC for the game with 2 new images, and more. So Chua began the video thanking players for helping the game sell 1 million copies in less than 2 months after release. He then sneakily drops a line confirming that Pinocchio-inspired Souls-like is getting a sequel. Our highest priority is developing the DLC and working on the sequel, Chua says in the director's letter. The dev team is putting in significant effort, brainstorming and exploring different aspects of the project. That's all Chua shares about the sequel, but it's nice to hear the team is working on one. And if you've been in Lies of P and watched this post-credit scene, you can likely guess where it's headed. By the way, Paul, have you heard like what the teased?
Well, you told me what it was, which it sounds like it's Neverland, isn't it?
No, the Neverland's for the DLC. The sequel is something else.
Oh no, I have no idea then.
Okay, slight spoilers for Lies of P, people. So, Dorothy.
Oh, Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the sequel will be like Wizard of Oz themed. So.
Very interesting. So we're going through like literary,
literally classics. That's kind of gonna be that's gonna be really cool. So, and speaking of DLC, Chua also shared 2 new images from Lies of P's in development DLC. The first image appears to be some kind of laboratory, perhaps a place where people in Krat experimented on humans to create monsters seen in the later half of Lies of P. The second image is vastly different, showing Pinocchio on a ship on the water. It's very piratey, and some image clues suggest that perhaps this DLC will be taking us to Neverland to help or fight Captain Hook, Peter Pan, and others. But that's just pure speculation. Check the pictures in if you want. And then upcoming Lies of P details. They said that elsewhere in the director's letter, Chua shares some details about an upcoming patch coming to Lies of P that should make the game more approachable. Here's a look at the Lies of P patch details and other future plans. The team will tweak the performance of the blade and handle combinations available in the game. The studio will make the shovel puppet and Venigni works easier to defeat. Rising Dodge will be a default skill, and Polandia will set 2 more additional quartz in the first stage of the shop to help you upgrade the P organ quicker. An Alidora mask and costume will be added to the game and free for all players. An extra cosmetic facial slot will be added so that players can wear hats and glasses. New wearables, including the Alchemist hat and additional glasses, will be added to the game. The team is preparing to release the game's soundtrack, which will encompass almost every song and include more than 60 tracks. Chua says the team is still discussing patch release plans, but that it's aiming for this month. So, Lies of P was excellent in what I played. That was Lies of P is the closest I felt a Souls-like not made by From Software has felt to a From Software game, and what's holding me back is like everything else that came out around that time that Lies of P came out, and also I kind of want to play it on PS5 instead of the Series S, because the controller for me, the PS5 controller just works better for a Souls-like than the Xbox controller. I don't know. I don't know why. It's just like it just feels right. Kind of like the Xbox controller just feels right for shooters. The PS5 controller just feels better for that kind of game. I kind of waiting to see if it gets a sale soon, because this is one of those games that is a sleeper. Kind of like, again, like how we felt Armored Core 6 and Alan Wake 2 were the big surprises for us. Lies of P is in that list for many people. So that's a game that I kind of want. Yeah. I kind of want to see like That's one of those games that kind of got away from me that I kind of want to see if I can see it through before the end of the year, before we ever do like game of the year. So
I'm
final,
hoping that we can, because it
yeah,
would be nice.
yeah, final story, and this was a really distressing one for a game that we haven't been playing much lately because of the year that's been, but also because there's not been a really good year for this game.
It's
Destiny
certainly going in the thumbnail.
Yeah. Destiny 2 dev Bungie hit with layoffs just 15 months after PlayStation acquisition. This is a story with 3 updates. So I'm gonna read all 3 updates, starting with the original story on Monday, October 30th. Destiny 2 developer Bungie, which was a story by Wesley LeBlanc from Game Informer. Destiny 2 developer Bungie, which was acquired by PlayStation last year for $3.6 billion, is the latest game maker to be hit with layoffs in 2023. Various former Bungie employees announced on Twitter today they had been laid off, and Bloomberg has confirmed with its sources that an undisclosed number of staff were laid off that day. Bloomberg reports that Bungie CEO Pete Parsons told staffers they'd be hearing some news today, and that following it, there will be a team meeting later that day to discuss that day's events. As for why employees were laid off, that remains unclear. That was at the time. Especially as the company is set to release a massive Destiny 2 expansion, the final shape that's set to end the decade-long saga that began in the first Destiny game. Bloomberg states that its sources say the final shape has been delayed internally to June 2024, months after its previously announced February 27, 2024 release date. By the way, Paul, that same day, Final Fantasy, that was around the same time as Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth.
Oh.
Yeah, we have to juggle both those two. A Game Informer reached out to PlayStation and will update the story if it learns more. In January of 2022, Sony announced it was acquiring Bungie for $3.6 billion and completed the purchase in July of 2022. These layoffs come less than 2 years after the purchase. And then the first update on the next day. Bungie has yet to reveal how many employees it laid off just on Monday, and it hasn't given an official reason why. However, as more former employees have shared details about the layoffs, we continue to learn who else was affected. It's how we know famed Destiny 2 composer Michael Salvatore, who also worked as co-composer alongside Marty O'Donnell on games like Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, and more, was either laid off or voluntarily left amidst the studio layoffs. It's currently unclear because, as noted by Video Games Chronicle, Destiny 2 community animator Carson Reed claims he was laid off, according to their own internal sources, but Windows Central's Jess Corden says he's heard Salvatore may have retired voluntarily. Nonetheless, Destiny Bulletin on Twitter noticed that on Salvatore's website, it no longer features the paragraphs where he describes his past and current work. Instead, it says, "Gone fishing," smiley emoticon. Elsewhere in the news of Bungie's layoffs, studio CEO Pete Parsons tweeted about the events, which is the first official address from the Destiny 2 maker. "Today is a sad day at Bungie as we say goodbye to colleagues who have all made a significant impact on our studio," he writes in a tweet. "What these exceptional individuals have contributed to our games and Bungie culture has been enormous and will continue to be part of Bungie culture long into the future." The final update that came out on November 1st. IGN and Bloomberg have learned new information about the layoffs that occurred at Destiny 2 maker Bungie this week, including that roughly 100 employees were laid off from the company. As for why, IGN sources report that during an employee meeting after the layoffs, Bungie CEO Pete Parsons told staff that the layoffs were due to the underperformance of Destiny 2 over the last year, as well as lower than expected pre-orders for the upcoming expansion, The Final Shape. Employees were reportedly told that Destiny 2 player sentiment had reached an all-time low, and IGN sources say employees at the studio have attempted to discuss this with Bungie's leadership, asking to make the necessary changes presumably to get player sentiment back up. Bloomberg reports that roughly 8% of Bungie's game unit staff were laid off due to Destiny playtime hitting a low, with IGN's sources say roughly 100 people were laid off. But Bloomberg also reports that sales at Bungie are running 45% below projections. And finally, IGN's own sources confirmed that information released by Bloomberg earlier this week, stating the Final Shape expansion for Destiny 2 had been internally delayed from its February 2024 release date to June. Plus, the publication reports that Marathon, which Bungie revealed earlier this year as a multiplayer extraction shooter, has been delayed to 2025. This week, Paul, has been a Bungie apocalypse in the lights I have never seen. Like, obviously,
we talked about how bad it was for Bungie back during the Activision days, the Forsaken, no, not Forsaken, the Trials of Osiris, sorry,
Curse of
whatever that was. Thank you.
Curse of Osiris.
Curse of Osiris, and the Warmind one, whatever that was called.
Yeah.
But this is I think this is way worse.
Yeah.
At least there was like an attempt for that. They were just dealing with some rough stuff. They were having some misfires, but they were still getting things out.
Yeah, there were scapegoats. The scapegoat
Yeah.
was Activision. Now,
And
like,
this time,
this time, like, no scapegoats, because as I was telling our clan when all this was breaking, it's like, because everyone was like, oh yes, like everyone said that Bungie under Microsoft and Activision was like bad. It's like words now under Sony. People gotta remember, it's like how they got acquired by Sony was like by a limited vertical integration. So that means like Bungie exists under Sony Corp but outside PlayStation, kind of like as its own thing. And in the contract stipulation, they were like, they're operating on their own. They make their own decisions. That's why their games are going multi-platform when other PlayStation games are only exclusives. So it's like, on that stipulation, these layoffs came from Bungie. We learned. And they came off in like the worst, like the most scummiest way possible. Some of the things that Paul Tassi was reporting, that he kept updating us because he had sources in. He was like finding information on his own, kind of like how they were laying off people very suddenly, cutting off access immediately, or just like hoping they were only gonna read the email where they were laid off and all that. It was like, and especially the worst part is, how are you running 45% below projection earnings? Like after Lightfall was one of your most successful like sold through expansions, as our friend Duncan mentioned in the chat, it was. The thing is that Lightfall was such a disappointment. No one stuck together. It's like, when was the last time you played Destiny, Paul? Just out of curiosity.
at least a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I may have deleted it yesterday.
Yeah, because it was 115 gigs. I saw it today. I was like,
a lot of gigs, and I had a lot of things to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'll go back to it eventually.
Yeah, it's like the game has just not been in a good shape. This season of The Witch is the one that people are saying, okay, they had a good season here. It's like the seasonal model has changed slightly, new progression. It's like the theme has been cool and all that. The weapons not so much. The Kuroda's End raid was like really well received. Reprisal for the people that wanted difficulty. It was like it caked a lot of streamers' ass during the day one in a way that the raid that came out with Lightfall didn't. But it's like that's what it always is. Like, you need your expansion to be good, like at least that initial wave, so that the goodwill can carry you through a year. In a year as good as 2023 when it comes to game releases, like with banger after banger after banger after banger, and with a looter like Diablo 4 that hit the ground running really strong with its launch. Obviously, it faltered with their season 1, but apparently season 2 for Diablo is actually really good. And I've been like debating on like, should I reinstall? Because I've been hearing really good things. Like Hogue was selling me on it when I've been chatting with him, because he's like been playing Diablo a lot. So, and he's been selling it over at the Bitcast. So I'm like, you have all this like immense competition. The quality of the games that we've been getting is just like been exceedingly high, that the quality of Destiny needed to be Witch Queen level and more to be able to compete. The fact that it's below even Beyond Light, like of what Destiny had been for a while, and seasonal is like at a certain point it was like, I think it was around the time we played Diablo, it was like, now we feel like we're being scammed of our time in Destiny. Like, look how rewarding Diablo is from moment to moment. It's just like the miserly loot you get from Destiny just in activities alone, especially because it's so old. Like, we reached a point where it's like we're at such a high end with how level up our characters are that it's like meaningful progression is like so stilted because the game is so damn old now. It's 6 years old compared to something fresh. So when you hit all of that and the quality not being as good, of course there's not going to be retention, but I'm like, what were you thinking you were going to earn if you're like 45% below? That's like, can you imagine like how you have undershot? It's like, that's a failure in management. That's a failure of whoever the CFO was. That's a failure of whoever was making like those earnings projections. And the worst part is seeing that the people that suffer are not those people making those decisions or that projected those earnings. It was the people that doing the grunt work, who we see in the sources, they knew that sentiment had not been good. it has not been good since like Season of the Deep, like the first season for this year post launch. It's like that is not an open secret. It's like Destiny's having a horrible year this year, and it's the worst possible time for you to have a horrible year on top of like the immense competition you have, and you're leading to your ending with the final shape. You're reaching the end of your 10-year saga, and instead of like we saw that showcase, we reacted as like our reacts didn't do as the numbers that our reacts for Lightfall did last year. That told me a lot. Is like sentiment is not good for the game. There was so much high going into Lightfall and the Lightfall reveal because the Witch Queen was so good. It's like the chickens came to roost, or like the sins of Lightfall came to roost in this year, and it's just so sad. It's like it's been like so heartbreaking seeing like more and more layoffs that I've been reading, but losing Michael Salvatore when that happened, I was like, you have just like committed suicide, like creative suicide. You can't, or he says that that whole thing with retirement, that's usually how like sometimes they try to like work in a slight layoff to a long tenured employee, because it's like at the end of the day it's a layoff, like whether it's because he was actively working on the soundtrack for the final shape. That was in the story. You could do the Wayback Machine of his website where he was like actively writing the soundtrack for the final shape, and then I was like gone fishing, and the even the composer that helped him write the Deepstone Lullaby. Remember, it's like a piano, super quiet song from like the Deepstone Crypt Raid when you're like in the jumping puzzles and all that. It's like he also put in his website gone fishing with Salvatore. So it's like he also got like, I doubt he also got, but yeah, he's just been like, yeah, you should retire. Like, yeah, take the retirement. It's like those are like Halo and Destiny more than any other franchise are defined by their music. Yes, I have been very big about music recently, Paul, like as we've talked in our chats, but it's like no one can deny that the soul of those games swells with their music. That's part of their identity. And Salvatore was that soul. Marty O'Donnell gave the bombast. He's probably the drums guy, basically, and the front-facing guy. But the one that gave the solemn feel and spirit of those games was Salvatore, and now he's gone. So it's like, I had been hearing that apparently he finished his work for the final shape, and that to me makes it clear. It's like, I don't think Destiny has a future anymore beyond the final shape. They said that there were episodes because I
used to think there was going to be something, but at this point, with the way they just cleared house, even if they put something out there, it's not going to have the musical stamp of one of the greatest composers of this modern day. Yeah. It's not going to have a lot of these really big name people. The fact that I'm hearing after the fact, a lot of people were like, hey, we really want to make this better because we heard about how poorly this was received and like the lower income from it. What can we do? We're gonna like tighten our belts and like work together on this. And
they were ready.
Getting fired without warning. Just like, you have less than an hour, get out of our building. Like, what in the world? I can't believe that's even a real thing sometimes.
Yeah.
And
like, how inhumane.
I've worked in the business space. Like, how messed up that is to be like, well, we're so big, we're just going to keep plugging away. We're just get out. Leave.
I saw a retweet from DMG, which is one of the community managers. He went to leave the keys to the car to an employee that got laid off that suffered a stroke last year. That's horrible. It's like just like it's like, and the worst part, Bungie, out of many studios, really love painting the image of this benevolent studio that's great to go work in. It's like it's all inclusive so much that we added a new Latino thing for like Latin at Bungie for the Latino, Latinas, Latine, and Latinx, and like that whole thing was like blew on their faces so like severely because it was like the people that they were saying that they were gonna represent felt offended by using these kind of terms also. So it's like they have always been that kind of company, but then you read that, it's like, don't you dare ever say that company, like they can never ever say that for their company ever again. Like, they can't. It's especially with the like these have been layoffs that have been like, how many times have we been hearing layoffs this entire year? It's been like really catastrophic. There's been like 6,000 people that have been laid off from the game industry this year, and a year where many of the companies who these people got laid off from were posting record earnings. So it's like, how does that even make sense? Like the greed from the C-suite to flaunt, because that's the thing. Like when I hear that a company's laying off people over missed earnings or something like that, it sucks, but that's understandable. It's like, oh yeah, they didn't make the money, so obviously they gotta like cut. But not so long ago, they were praising the high success of Lightfall. To then for us to come learn that they really undershot despite the massive success of Lightfall, is like they put themselves in horrifically unrealistic expectations of what that game was supposed to make, especially for a game as old as that, and that it's not the talk of the town anymore. It's like we played it because we're addicted. Like we're playing because we're addicted. We like the feel. It's like I've been in that game for a while, but it's like I've been through that game enough to know that what this game was in popularity at the beginning is not even close to what it is now. Why are you like overshooting like that? This is like, that's just gross incompetence and gross mismanagement, and that really sucks, especially for the people that, you know, it's like there's always this meme of like, is Bungie really listening to criticism? We know they are. Like we know they are, and that sucks.
Or at least they were.
Yes, they were. So, and they put out a. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because this is the final thing. Because they put this week in Bungie got delayed, but they put a statement basically, and
thought I saw that.
Yeah, it's called Our Path Forward. Let me read it. They didn't put a name of who wrote this, so it's just a Destiny 2 dev team. Our Path Forward. This has been one of the most difficult weeks in our studio's history, as we parted ways with people we respect and admire. We spent this week supporting one another, including those who are at the studio, as well as friends and colleagues who no longer are. We want to acknowledge the feedback and concern you have about Lightfall in recent seasons, as well as your response to the reveal of the final shape. We know we have lost a lot of your trust. Destiny needs to surprise and delight. We haven't done this enough, and that's going to change. To us, the path forward is clear. We need to make the final shape an unforgettable Destiny experience. We want to build something that will be regarded alongside the best games we've ever made. A fitting culmination that honors the journey we've been on together for the past 10 years. Forsaken, the Witch Queen, and the Taken King. These are the standard bearers we aim to live up to. We are intensely focused on exceeding your expectations for the final shape. Destiny 2 has more than 650 dedicated teammates, pouring all their energy and expertise into delivering this epic moment and its subsequent episodes. In the weeks ahead, you'll be hearing more from us about what's next on the short-term horizon, beginning with our next season in late November. Afterwards, we'll begin to unpack our team's bigger, bolder, and brighter vision for the final shape, as well as the bridge we plan to build to take us all out of this darkness and into the light. See you, Starside, the Destiny 2 dev team. The most generic statement you could possibly put out, and especially it's emphasizing, oh yeah, we have 650 people still working on this thing. So it's like, oh yeah, but didn't you used to have like 750 then, because you laid off like 100? So is that supposed to like engender any confidence, especially knowing that they're still also working on Marathon? Which do you see the tweet that I posted yesterday that Astrocross like laid
off?
Is
that the one the people who play Tarkov and asked them if they would play Marathon tomorrow if it was out, and nobody raised their hands. What a just
brutal.
Oh, this is like Diablo Immortal kind of a reaction. It's like clearly they are making somebody that people didn't want. Like they wanted Destiny to get fixed, and they were like, we're gonna make a new extraction shooter, and then ruin everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, what the heck, guys?
Yeah, they moved all the key talent, like the leads from Destiny moved over to Marathon. And like, it was like the front-facing leads that worked on the best content of this game. Taken King and Witch Queen. Forsaken. Witch Queen was made by a different team, and they were able to make something good despite not using the same team, but the PvP community of Destiny has been like in disarray for years. Being like, why are there no maps? Why does it feel like they're neglecting this big element of the game that has 500,000 people almost weekly average just on Steam playing? Like, again, because they're like, oh yeah, a lot of people are relatively playing. We're not doing anything. Let's keep it that way until it finally like that garbage hit the fan. But yeah, man, it's like Then when they learn, oh yeah, the entire PvP team moved to Marathon, and you hear this, that's extra salt in the wound of like, so they jerked off the Destiny 2 PvP community for this other game that apparently like the people that they're aiming for, the Tarkov people, are like, no, it's like what we played, nope. Even though apparently there was another source that came out being like, that Bungie made it clear that this was pre-alpha and that was just kind of like data gathering, but even if in your pre-alpha state, the audience that you're pursuing is not feeling it, is like, oof, like that's a big oof. I'm still gonna play Final Shape. I'm still gonna play Final Shape, especially if this comes out in June next year. Next year is not looking like the release monstrosity that this year was, so we'll definitely need something to play. So the Final Shape in June seems like something that, well, at least it's like we'll have something to play, and I kind of want to see how they decide to end this 10-year thing. But unless they prove otherwise, like that's the exit ramp. That's like, I gave this game 10 years of my life, more than I ever given any game in my life. Like, it's like that's a first for me. It's like, I want to see at least the end, but I don't blame people that already, like, from our clan, they're already deleted. Also, if you're listening, yes, it's your thing. As so yes, it's like sad times, because it sucks, because I see my clan play. I see our clan, they play Minecraft, and I'm like, that's so cool. At least they're fine. It's like, I don't have, like, I wish I could have another game that I will enjoy playing like that, as just gather with some friends. That's the thing I love the most about Destiny, especially the PvE side of things. I just can't do it.
Probably more fun than any playing something by itself was actually being around other people, answering questions when you knew the answers to it, and having people that you could be like, hey, I don't understand this, could you help me out? And then they're just there. It's I do miss that. And like, if the right circumstances come across where everybody's wanting to jump back on Destiny together, I'll be there. But hopefully it'll be some game that we all want to play equally in the future as well, even if it's not Destiny.
Yeah, this is when a Destiny killer or a Destiny replacement would sound really nice around this time, but because everyone decided to pursue battle royales instead. It's like, it's only Diablo, but even Diablo is like, the subject matter of Diablo makes it hard for me to like want to keep investing in it, even though it's really fun. So I know that they were talking about the Division. I never finished the Warlords of New York for that one, but the Division's different from Destiny.
They mentioned Division 2 specifically, which I only played the very early parts of the launch campaign version. I could not tell you anything that happened in that game.
No.
I don't even know if I still have it.
Yeah, nothing really happened. They really like didn't do story much in the Division 2. They built the game towards the things that they saw people lean more towards from the first game. And the first game had more of a story. It had a cooler setting. It had a cooler theme. It had a cooler kind of like inciting event. The Black Friday flu or something like that leaves New York in the perpetual winter. Is like such a cool idea for a game that way different for the second game. Even though the second game plays better, has better systems, but hopefully we figure that out, because it's like, I do miss being able to play with it, because I've been lurking. I joined the chat, kind of like how I told you that I convinced two of our clan buddies to get Alan Wake 2. It's like, I lurked into one of their boys' chats. I was chatting with them. I sent them links of what I was playing, and they're gonna buy it. So it's like, it's cool to at least just jump into their Discord and just talk, because it's fun. That's the thing that I'll always appreciate Destiny for doing for me, because it's like, I was a very singular, I'm just gonna play single player games and listen to a podcast kind of gamer. So, which is what makes this hurt so much, seeing this. So my heart goes to everyone that got laid off. The Salvatore music has been in rotation for me recently, because I feel like I'm in mourning, and his music is just so damn good. Do you listen to the title screen music that I linked from like the vanilla Destiny 2? It's like, it's so amazing. It's like,
I didn't listen to it then, but I can kind of hear it in my head whenever I close my eyes, you know.
Yeah, it's because it's so perfect. It's like that. The Destiny 2 music is just so, that soundtrack I remember is like,
I mean, there's a reason why that poster before the game even launched stayed up on my wall for so many years.
Yeah, it's like, It's so good. It's like the Salvatore music is like forever will go as some of my favorite music ever in any game. Especially just listen to the title screen music. Just put Destiny 2 title screen music HD. You'll find it's like, especially from the vanilla, there was just something rousing about like the new, when Destiny 2 was new, there was something powerful about that music.
So much.
Yeah, so Paul, that's the end of the news. Read the few releases for the week of November 5th to November 11th, 2023.
All right, let me get this out of the way. All right, so the first thing we have is The Invincible on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on November 6th. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC November 7th. I do want to mention, Alejandro, look up The Invincible. It looks really interesting, actually.
Yeah, Ains, my EIC has been reviewing it. He got a code for that.
It's like a space mystery game. I saw that was, it caught my curiosity.
Yeah, caught my curiosity too. Mm-hmm.
Salt and Sacrifice on the Switch on November 7th. Berserk Recharge on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on November 9th. Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on November 9th. And lastly, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC on November 10th.
And you can play that now if you pre-order, and you can play the campaign.
Yes.
Yeah. Like a Dragon...
Only the campaign, right?
Yeah, only a campaign. That was an ingenious thing they did last year with Modern Warfare 2, because that's why... I bet that's how many, because one of the things that I thought I was being gaslit in last year was, remember when we were hearing people being like, the Modern Warfare 2 campaign is one of the best campaigns of the series. And we're like, what? And I feel like what happened is like, and I feel it proves many people, when they bought other Call of Duties, immediately jumped into multiplayer because everything was there. By them splicing the campaign for like a week early, it's kind of like a incentive to just start playing the game. That was a brilliant move to get people to play the campaign again. So I can imagine many people, when they play that and they have not played a campaign in like forever, you would feel like, oh, this is one of the best ones. But no, people, it's not. The Modern Warfare 2 campaign is one of the worst ones. Maybe not the worst, but it's like in that bottom tier. I have them all ranked. I'm going to do an article about that. It's from when I did that playthrough from 2021, Paul, I still have that. I still have all of that like written. I
remember.
Yeah, so well, that's The Invincible. I really want to hear more because I really heard good things about it from Ains. So, and then Like a Dragon Gaiden is Game Pass. So, are we resubbing soon?
We might resub for everything else, but I wouldn't do it for
I want to resub. I want to resub sub for Lies of P because I still have that, and I want to go back to Starfield. I think
we might be able to get away with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I kind of want to change the date of when we were like paying our month because the other one was like the 21st. So
okay.
So yeah, that's this week's episode, Paul. So where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I have been posting some really hilarious little video clips. Actually, Alejandro, did you notice that thing that happened to me in Alan Wake Remastered happened a second time?
Yes, it's so hilarious. The tractor thing.
Yep, the tractor thing. There's little moments of gold buried in the middle of all of that, and then it's sometimes me posting things. I am adamant I'm going to start posting pictures of my random sketch journal entries because I don't post enough art and I don't draw enough really good art because I'm never in front of my computer in a drawing capacity for that. So yeah, that's what I do. What about you?
They can find me at _Dorsegobi on Twitter/X. They can find my promotions of the podcast on Instagram/Threads at AlejandroSegovia93. And they can find my written content at both seasongaming.com and my website, thecriticalcorner.com. You can read my Spider-Man 2 review and Super Mario Wonder review over at criticalcorner.com right now. And Alan Wake 2 review coming soon in Season Gaming. So, that's it for this week's episode. I'm going to go play more Call of Duty so I can be done with that. And then face the reality, Paul, that release season is over. And then I'll have to look back and see what I want to play again. So, all
right, hurry and finished so that
you can try it.
I can also play it.
Yes. So, and everyone, thank you for listening to this week's episode. We couldn't do it without you. I love seeing like the increasing numbers of the extra episodes that I've been posting has worked with the algorithm, and especially like you saw the reach, right? What I've showed you on
I can't remember.
For the audio. I showed you a screenshot. Be like, look how many people is this reaching now.
Oh yeah. That was insane. What was it, like 2,400 or something ridiculous?
Yeah,
Oh my
in like a
gosh.
month. So it was like, whoo, it's growing. Thank you, Spotify. I hated you for absorbing. I hated you for absorbing Anchor, but in the end, like they actually are like showing it and recommended to people. So I'm like, yeah, I guess it had to work for something. So, well, and with that, enjoy some games, people. Enjoy November with the coldness. Like, stay safe. Touch some grass if you can walk outside. And
press X
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.